This is English Shorthand Dictation number 91 and the dictation speed is 120 words per minute. Ready? Start. An ordinance is a temporary law made by the President of India on the advice of the central government when Parliament is not in session. An ordinance becomes a permanent act on being approved by Parliament within 6 weeks of reassembly. As Parliament convenes for the monsoon session in September, it will need to consider and approve ordinances promulgated over the past 6 months. Since March 24, when the lockdown was imposed, 11 ordinances have been signed by the President. With every session, the BJP government is brazenly rewriting the rules of Parliament. In the forthcoming monsoon session, it has cancelled question hour, so the opposition is not given a chance to hold the government accountable. It has slashed 0 hour time from 60 minutes to 30 minutes to deprive the opposition of raising issues of importance. It has misused a constitutional tool such as an ordinance to mock Parliament in a way it has not been done in 70 years. 5 of the 11 ordinances are broadly related to the outcome of COVID-19, coupled with 2 in the health sector. All the 11 ordinances are unrelated to the pandemic, including the Banking Regulation Amendment Ordinance and the 3 ordinances related to agriculture. These are the 11 ordinances that Parliament will be required to approve in the coming fortnight. Many previous presidents have raised questions about individual ordinances. The current president, in his wisdom, prefers to go ahead without asking questions. Some statistics are revealing. In the first 30 years of our parliamentary democracy, there was 1 ordinance promulgated for every 10 bills introduced in Parliament. In the following 30 years, the ratio was 2 ordinances for every 10 bills. In the 16th Lok Sabha, the number jumped to 3.5 ordinances for every 10 bills. In the current Lok Sabha, it is so far 3.3 ordinances to every 10 bills. In the first term of the Narendra Modi government, the number shot up to 10 ordinances a year. About 10 ordinances were issued on the eve of the 2019 general election. Clearly, the BJP has a preference for short-circuiting democracy. Ordinances have to be approved by Parliament within 6 weeks of reassembly. In fact, there are 2 problems. The first one is that the BJP government thinks nothing of re-promulgating ordinances that have lapsed. This is a breach of convention and extremely undemocratic. But the Modi government has done it more than once. The second problem is that a bill that seeks post facto approval for an ordinance is often rushed through the House. The deliberation and fine-tuning, the pre-legislative stakeholder consultations, and the committee scrutiny are important stages in the passage of a law. Ordinances that hurriedly become bills and then acts bypass this process. Is the BJP government guilty of pushing laws that it wants in place without adequate parliamentary discussion or scrutiny by parliament committees, especially when the country is distracted by a pandemic? The Banking Regulation Amendment Ordinance is a response to the Punjab and Maharashtra Cooperative Bank scandal. There have been 2 parliamentary sessions since the scandal became public knowledge, and no draft bill was introduced. Similarly, permitting corporate farming and liberalizing agricultural trade regimes as well as produce movement to benefit big retailers should have been preceded by adequate parliamentary debate. These are significant and controversial decisions. Has care been taken to address the information asymmetry between farmers who sell and big traders and corporations that buy? This could have been scrutinized by a parliamentary committee. The ordinance glosses over it and passes itself off as either pandemic relief to farmers or an economic reform. The fact is that it is neither of them. The timing of such ordinances is very odd and no coronavirus related gap is being filled. This problematic ordinance culture has extended to BJP run states as well. During the lockdown, BJP governments in Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat issued ordinances diluting labor laws without consulting worker unions and civil rights groups. Even the International Labour Organization advised caution. On March 15, just before the lockdown, the Uttar Pradesh Recovery of Damages to Public and Private Property Ordinance was promulgated. It sought to impose punitive fines on those who damaged public and private properties during protests. This is a law reminiscent of the colonial era. To support and enable the implementation of the Farmers' Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Ordinance, the central government is pushing states to amend their Agriculture Produce Marketing Committee Acts. This will minimize the role of state market committees and risk creating agricultural cartels of big food businesses and retailers. Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat and Karnataka have acted as per command and promptly promulgated ordinances. It is important to mention here that there are only 3 parliamentary democracies in the world that permit the ordinance route: India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. The practice in India was adopted from the Government of India Act 1935, where the Viceroy could do as he pleased. In every other country, Parliament has to be convened in order to get a law passed. In recent days, the central government has introduced a slew of ordinances related to land acquisition, raising cap on foreign investment in the insurance sector, coal mining license allocation, changes to the TRI Act, and so on. Several governments in the past, including the earlier UPA regime, have used the ordinance route to push through legislations which they have found difficult to get passed in the legislature. What is the ordinance route and does it benefit the people? Article 123 of the Indian Constitution gives the right to the President of India to promulgate an ordinance if neither House of Parliament is in session and circumstances exist which render it necessary for him to take immediate action. Every ordinance has to be presented to Parliament and ceases to exist 6 weeks from the end of the next sitting of Parliament. Since the Constitution requires that Parliament be convened at least once every 6 months, ordinances have a de facto expiration period of approximately 7.5 months. Article 213 gives the same power to the governor of a state. Ordinance making power is not a new feature added by the Constituent Assembly to the Indian Constitution. Article 42 and 43 of the Colonial Government of India Act 1935 gave the same power to the Governor General. So, the power to promulgate ordinances in the hands of the executive is a definite provision that our colonial rulers made so as to ensure that sovereignty lies in the hands of the executive and not the people. The new Indian rulers realized that it is to their benefit that this article is retained in the new constitution. Some of the Constituent Assembly members argued that the executive's power to promulgate ordinances should be through greater oversight by legislatures. They were overruled by Dr. Ambedkar, who stated that ordinance making powers were necessary since existing law might be deficient to deal with a situation which may suddenly and immediately arise. Later, in many instances, the particular situation that Dr. Ambedkar mentioned turned out to be situations concerning economic and political reforms in favor of monopoly houses.